In my last video, I shared why every writer needs a genuine critique group. And by genuine, I mean good. Not every critique group is effective or healthy for you in your writing. So today I want to talk about why you need to recognize a good or bad writer's critique group. By learning the signs of a good group and the red flags of a bad group, you'll be able to better find the group that's right for you, and you will also protect yourself and your writing. Good critique groups can be wonderful. Bad critique groups can be horrific. This is Ignited Ink Writing, a channel dedicated to helping authors like you transform your writing so it lingers with your readers, because writing that lingers gets remembered and recommended to others. I'm Caitlin Burvey, editor and writer. Let's start with the 5 signs of a good critique group. 1. Constructive feedback. Constructive feedback will point out what is and is not working in a piece and how to fix the sections that are not working. That's where the constructive part comes in. A partner giving constructive feedback might say, I have no idea what your character is thinking in this moment. Here are 3 places where you could insert character thoughts. That's constructive. They're telling you what the problem is and suggesting ways or places you can fix it. Constructive feedback also focuses on what you as a writer are trying to do or say with your piece. They're not trying to turn it into something else. They're trying to help you make what you're doing the best that it can be. The second sign of a good critique group is positivity. As well as what's not working, they're going to point out what is. A good critique group will make you aware of what your strengths are and help you hone in and utilize those. They're not just going to tell you what's not working. They're going to say, this was a really great line. I love that comparison. Or great job on the setting. I know you've been working on that. This praise is going to encourage writers in the group to keep writing. It can be difficult to only hear what's not working with your piece, so positivity is important. It will also just make the group a fun place to be. My critique groups laugh. I love being there because it's fun. It's not just about what's not working. Number 3, a good critique group will offer big and small comments. They're not just going to focus on the copy edits. Yes, they will point out where you're missing a comma or you used the wrong version of a certain word. But when you go to critique and you're having discussions, they're going to focus on the big picture edits. They're going to say things like, this scene has absolutely no tension. How can we add tension? And they'll give you suggestions. They're not just going to spend the whole meeting talking about comma rules. In this way, your critique group is going to function more like a developmental editor than a copy editor. They're also going to recognize when something is 10-page syndrome. What that means is they know that this chunk is part of a larger piece. So they might say something like, I have no idea what this character looks like, but I didn't read the previous 10 pages, so maybe you told me there. They're going to be aware that this is larger than just the submission for today. Number 4 is thick skin. The members of your critique group and you should be able to take feedback without getting overly defensive and stubborn. You should be able to sit there and listen to the comments that your peers are giving you without feeling the need to jump in, interrupt, and defend your piece. Afterwards, you should feel comfortable asking clarifying questions, and maybe about something that's been bothering you with this piece. Thick skin is something that is developed, so know that it's going to take a little time and practice. If someone is new to critique, you might give them the space to develop this thick skin. Number 5 is chemistry. A critique group is made up of people. Writers are people. Sometimes you just don't mesh with someone. You should mesh to some degree with the members of your critique group. You should be able to at least interact on a professional, respectful level. You should also have similar goals for your writing. If you have a group where everyone wants to become a career published author and one person just feels like writing, that might not be the best group for that one person who just wants to write. The same thing goes if you're a part of a group where everyone is just writing for themselves and has no intention of publishing, but you want to be a published author, that might not be the best group for you because they don't have the same goals. A good critique group will have chemistry and the same goals. So the 5 signs of a good critique group are constructive feedback, positivity, big and small comments, thick skin, and chemistry. If you see those things in a group that you are trying out for or testing, that's a good sign. Now let's talk about 5 red flags of bad critique groups. The first is destructive feedback. They tell you what's not working in your piece, but they do not tell you how to fix it. They just point out, this isn't working, you're missing tension, I don't like this character. That's not helpful. They might also offer you feedback that looks constructive, but is actually destructive, because they're trying to rewrite your piece the way they would have written it. I was a part of a critique group where one person brought in a sci-fi fiction piece. Climate fiction, it's about global warming. And someone spent most of the session arguing that global warming wasn't real. That's not helpful. I don't care if you believe in global warming or not. 1, this is fiction. It's not real. Even if it's based on science, still fiction. And 2, it's about making that story better, not changing it to fit your political beliefs. So be aware when someone is understanding your story and trying to make your story better, and when they are transforming it into something you might not want it to be. The second sign of a bad critique group is all negative or all positive feedback. If all the critique group does is say what's not working, that can easily wear down a writer and harm their confidence. So those little moments where you say, nice line, great simile, I love this character name, those really do matter, and they keep a writer going. They're encouraging and supportive. So don't just focus on the negative. However, the flip side is also true. If all you do is say, this piece is wonderful, I love this line, great character arc, that sort of a thing, your writer's not going to grow. A writer goes to a critique group because they know their writing could be improved. If you don't offer them ways to improve, then you're not really a critique group. The third red flag for a bad critique group is they focus on the inconsequential. What I mean is they might spend most of the group talking about your overuse of exclamation points instead of that glaring plot hole. All you need to do is say, you overuse exclamation points. You get 2 of them per story. That's it. Then move on to the other aspects of the writing that might need improvement. A bad critique group is going to get lost in the weeds of the copy edits. The fourth sign of a bad critique group, or maybe just a bad member, is they get defensive. They can't take critique without interrupting and defending their piece. They are able to tell you what's not working in your story, but anytime you say anything more than you forgot a comma, they get angry, upset, or stubborn. That's not a good critique group. That's not a good critique group member. These people have been known to be so difficult that they dissolve critique groups. So if you see this happening, that's not the group for you. Number 5 is egos and attitudes. A little bit different than being defensive. If your critique group members do not respect each other, then your critique group's not going to function the way you might need it to. If someone believes they're the most knowledgeable person there and acts as if they know better than everyone else, that's not going to create a good learning environment. So you need to respect each other as writers. You also need to be able to communicate. Sometimes people are new to critique, so they're not familiar with the terminology yet. In that case, I recommend they read The Dictionary of Fiction Critique by Kate Janeska to get caught up on the terms that critique groups might use. Sometimes, though, you just have 2 people who can't communicate effectively. There was this time in my life when my parents would argue, but they were saying the exact same thing, just in different ways, and they didn't recognize that they were actually in agreement. Those are 2 people who should not be in a critique group together. My parents are able to better communicate now. So make sure the members of your critique group are respectful and speak each other's language. So again, the 5 red flags of a bad critique group are destructive criticism, all positive or all negative, focusing on the inconsequential, defensive, and egos and attitudes. Next, I want to share why a professional editor recommends you give writers a chance. I know I just went through the 5 signs of good and bad critique groups, but be aware that It's not easy to be a good critique group member. It takes time and there's a learning curve involved. So if you have someone who's approached you and they're brand new to critique, give them some time to develop their skills. Remember how long it took you to become the critique group member you are today. At the same time, if you have a group that's full of professional, experienced authors, that might not be the place for a new person to start. So pay attention to that with critique groups as well. Yes, you want to join the best one out there, but you also need to be able to bring something to the table. Often critique groups will have an auditioning period. Maybe they'll ask you to come and try out the group 1 or 2 times before either of you decide if you're a good fit. So use that time wisely. I recommend going at least twice. Groups do have off days, so if the first day you don't quite mesh, try one more time just to be sure. The flip side of that is also true. If you go to a critique group and they have glaring red flags, run. Don't even waste your time on them. Find someone else. If you find that your critique group is starting to fall apart because of these red flags, there's no shame in leaving and finding a better group. You have to protect your writing and your confidence. Also, one critique group might work great for a friend of yours, but just isn't what you're looking for, and that's okay too. This is about you and your writing and finding the best group for you. What are both positive and negative signs you look for when deciding whether or not to join a critique group? Share them in the comments below. And for more videos on critique groups and other aspects of writing, subscribe to Ignited Ink Writing, a channel dedicated to helping authors like you transform your writing so it lingers with your readers. Because writing that lingers gets remembered and recommended to others. I'm Caitlin Burvey, editor and writer. To find out more about me, go to www.ignitedinkwriting.com. There you will also find critiquing guidelines, which will help you set up your own critique group or better recognize these good and bad flags. And now it's your turn to find a critique group with good signs and no red flags to ignite your ink.